Hi there. So I am continuing to analyse the recent upload, Crystalline Samhain 1111 Stargate, November 11th, 2019, and I'm calling this series the Krystal Stargate series. So I'm carrying on from our last analysis, where the nine continue to talk about the storage within bone. And they go on to say, as storage, this has never left you. It has always been available within your lockup, in a treasure chest, or secret hidden hallway within the inner building that transforms itself to the Krystal Palace once the imagination fields of hyperspace landscapes begin to construct. So this is really everything I was talking about in the last episode, the last part. As storage, this has never left you. It's not been taken, it's not been stolen, it hasn't gone anywhere. It's simply been in storage, but always with you. Using the metaphor of, it has always been available within your lockup. So a lockup that you might have, like a garage or something, in a treasure chest, so in a treasure chest with a little key, or secret hidden hallway within the inner building. So looking at the metaphor of the imagination within being a building, and in that building is a secret hidden hallway. So somewhere this has been available, locked away inside something, but you've always had access to it. It wasn't accessible, and it isn't accessible to some individuals now because they don't know how to find the key to the lockup or the inner treasure chest, or to get it to the secret hidden hallway. But those metaphors are there to explain that everything has always been there, and that's within the skeletal system, within the DNA, and buried within bone. Within the inner building that transforms itself to the Krystal Palace. So the inner building might be a house or a structure, or it could be anything, but it transforms itself from an ordinary building to a Krystal Palace once the imagination fields of hyperspace landscapes begin to construct. So when you first start to awaken, it's different with everybody, but if you're looking at the landscapes as metaphor for dimensional states, then you might feel that you have a room within your mind. It might be so organized, you've got a little bookshelf and a table and a chair, and then it might be a garden, and then it might be a beautiful building, a hotel, a holiday resort, a forest, anything. But the imagination fields of hyperscape landscapes are the higher versions. So you'll be looking at fifth dimensional landscapes, so crystal structures, rivers, forests with magical trees and fairies. And that's when the imagination, when you become aware that the imagination isn't just imagination as in something you've imagined, when you realize that the imagination fields are that which are metaphoric for your understanding. They are messages, they are presentations of aspects within you, such as traumas or ideas or emotions, and they are also that which you create with. They are a code or a language in themselves. So once those imagination fields of hyperspace landscapes begin to construct, that inner building will transform itself to the Krystal Palace, which is metaphor also for the DNA system, the DNA structure, which is moving from a third dimensional double helix into beyond the double helix into a triple helix, beyond the triple helix into an infinite helix, and is becoming crystalline. It's moving from carbon to crystalline. So this is inner alchemy. You are moving from a state of lead into a state of gold, if you will. And again, that's metaphor, but it's also literal, because the molecular structure does actually begin to change and become like an inner gold, or a golden light, or a liquid gold. And the emotion that is aligned with that alchemical transformation is euphoria, bliss, and ecstasy. So that which has been in storage within lock-up, treasure chest, or secret hidden hallway becomes the very foundations and fabric of the entire structure. So that which has been in storage, so that's which has been in storage is the knowing of the inner technology, the ability to utilize the inner technology, the higher dimensional DNA template. That is what the 9 are talking about. It's been in storage within lock-up, treasure chest, or secret hidden hallway, but it now becomes the very foundations and fabric of the entire structure. So this is the transformation and transmutation of the physical body, because the entire foundation of the physical body has been a carbon-based molecular structure, and everything is built on that. But when you remove that which has been hidden from the storage, or from the lockup, the treasure chest, or the secret hidden hallway, that which you retrieve from that lockup becomes the very foundations of the entire structure. That which you retrieve is the full template of the DNA structure. So the foundations on a molecular level is a crystalline one, which is silicon or silicate. That's how the 9 present it. The foundations of your molecular structure is no longer carbon, it's silicon. All that was once you unfolds upon itself. This is known as compression and implosion. So this is a tough one to explain. It's hard to talk about what actually happens here on a physiological level. So I can just show you what the 9 show me. But what they show me is the carbon-based molecular structure is like, if you imagine it laid out like a landscape, like a pop-up book. And if you imagine a pop-up book is made of like cardboard or paper, that folds in on itself like this. So the whole thing sort of collapses down. So that becomes compression, and implosion is like the opposite of explosion. So instead of an explosion which goes that way, this is an implosion which kind of goes that way, inward. So it all folds inward like this. It all goes into compression and implosion. So it folds in on itself. The entire reality reconfigures itself. The geometric structure of all that is you reconfigures itself into a new structure. So all infolds like this. And then the 9 say all unfolds as inside out becomes outside in. So all implodes on itself, and the reality becomes out the other side, and then this whole new reality, which is no longer a pop-up book made of cardboard, but we could have here what we would have if you were using a cardboard or paper pop-up book as a metaphor. What you'd be left with is a holographic pop-up book made of holographic paper, because there would be loads of them. So you've gone into this quantum state. No longer one landscape, implode, come out the other side. Multiple landscapes that look like one, but they've got like shadows behind them. Not shadows, like mirror images behind them in varying states of visibility and strength. And each one a reality in and of itself. So that's the going quantum. That's what's happening to the DNA. All unfolds as inside out becomes outside in. So inside out in there becomes outside in. You kind of turn the other way around energetically within the DNA. The inner and true pole shift. So the 9 say that the true pole shift that everyone's been talking about, and all the channels have been picking up about this pole shift. The 9 say this may or may not manifest for you on a physical level as an actual pole shift on the planet. That is simply a reaction to the true pole shift, which is that which is happening within you. Your magnetic north within your matrix field is becoming your magnetic south, and vice versa. The pole shift is occurring within. Now, for the majority of starseeds who hold cohesion to the ascension timeline, they will not experience geological pole shifting in a destructive sense on the planet or geological domain that they exist upon. It may occur for others depending on the timeline they are manifesting. There are multiple timelines. Once you get into this inside out, outside in, you are in a quantum reality. So you're not looking at just one thing, you're looking at everything behind it. You start to see everything behind that one thing. You see the multiple layers behind that one presentation, and you start to see that everything, every single thing you look at has echoes of itself. That's a better way to explain it. Echoes of itself that are just as real as the actual object itself. So you could take a crystal, take my little crystal again. So we can see one crystal here, and it's just made of crystal. There's just one. But when you look at that in its quantum sense, through true reality, through a true energetic template, you will see multiple crystals. And if you were to tune in on that crystal, each little part of that crystal would have its own multiple echo presentations of it. So there would be a full matrix that's infinite just on the crystal. And every single object has that. I mean, a crystal has them more powerfully because crystals are the very substance that the antimatter template is created of in its third dimensional sense. A crystal is a living structure. The inner and true pole shift, flat Earth system to spherical globe and vice versa. So what that means is, using the metaphor that is on humanity's minds at the moment, there's a lot of individuals that perceive this reality in its geological sense as the shape of the Earth being flat, and there are far more perceiving the Earth as being a spherical globe. The individuals who perceive the flat Earth system are not fully third dimensional. They'll be living within higher echelons of third dimensional reality and somewhat fourth, although some of them may be within a distorted third dimensional system, and some of them are more so fourth and potentially fifth as well. So you've got a real you've got a higher consciousness for the flat Earth system than you would have if it was just third dimensional individuals who were moving to that belief system, simply because the flat Earth belief is centered upon the controllers of the reality hiding the truth, and that is what is true and real and fully in alignment about that belief system. It doesn't necessarily mean the Earth that you live on is actually flat in a full presentation, in a full reality. But what it does mean is those that have tried and continue to try to hijack and control this reality have hidden the truth from us about the geological structure and shape of our planet. It doesn't necessarily in full alignment manifest utterly flat, neither does it in full alignment manifest as fully spherical, and it isn't what we are told it is. And a lot of the pictures we see from NASA and other places are not real and are created in studios and that sort of thing. But there's truth there as well, sort of merged together. And what the 9 are using here is the flat Earth system to spherical globe and vice versa. It's just another way of explaining the outside in and the inside out. And the reason why they use this is because you create your reality. Your belief system creates the reality that you exist within. If you truly believe that your Earth is flat, I mean, you may be living in a distorted reality on a more spherical Earth. But if you have cohesion in your belief structure, there are multiple presentations of the geological Earth, and it may well be that you time jump, if you will. It's difficult to explain because everyone is part of a global timeline that they share, and everyone is part of an individual timeline that they don't share with anyone. So you may be experiencing a geological Earth that is more of a flat shape than someone else. What I'm saying is that your timeline will create the reality you live in, the house you live in, the furniture that's in your house, the country that you're in, and the actual system you live upon in a geological sense, whether that's round or flat or somewhere in between. And the truth is that it's multidimensional. The truth is that you create everything. If enough people hold a belief that's cohesive, they create that. But many people can hold a distorted belief and they won't create that to be real, because a distorted belief doesn't hold any cohesion. Cohesion is when all of you believe it. That's the mind and the body and the heart and the memory system from other incarnations. When all of that is cohesive, then that creates a reality, and that can create a change in the timeline you exist within and the actual presentation of the Earth you live upon. Going a little bit further into this subject, just briefly, before I go off on a tangent, like I tend to do, the template for most planets is spherical. If a planet isn't fully spherical, something has changed with that planet. The actual planet, when it's born, is a sphere. What I will say regarding the whole flat Earth thing is there has been a change to the geology of the planet within the actual global timeline. So when you're looking at, from that point of view, the flat Earth individuals have some truth to it in the fact that the Earth isn't the shape that they're telling us, or the Earth's movement isn't what they're telling us it is. There were changes to this planet at a time when there were I could say wars in space, but war is a third dimensional and a fourth dimensional interpretation. It's more of a huge solar electrical storm took place in our galaxy. But those that were the elements within the storm were alive and held consciousness, and they were in a polarized state to one another. That caused geological change to this planet. That's what the 9 have shown me. So the whole flat Earth system to spherical globe and vice versa is taking the belief systems that are projecting from the consciousness and are standing in the highest sort of strength, because the flat earthers, if you like, aren't just a group of third dimensional individuals. There are some expanded individuals there, therefore their belief system and their consciousness holds more radiation to it. Then you've got all of the other individuals who hold the knowing. It's a knowing rather than a belief when it's cohesive. So you've got some individuals within this flat earth belief community that are holding a distorted view of their Earth, but others are holding a cohesive view, so they're adding to a creational timeline. And then you've got all of these other individuals within the sort of community that know that the Earth is a globe. So you have the two. And so the 9 are taking those two because they are the most strong, the most loud, the most clear, the most bright, whichever word you want to use to describe that energetic signal that's coming from their consciousness, and they're flipping it, flat Earth to spherical, spherical to flat. It's because the 9 are using this as a metaphor for the flip, which is compression and implosion and turning outside in and coming out the other side. Everything enfolds into a tiny, tiny little piece and then recreates itself into a quantum version. And that's this change in density from the third density to the fourth density. So that's a different model. Compression and implosion and the folding in and turning inside out would be a third density to fourth density model. So you're in this density where everything is as you see it, and then when you go through this implosion and come out the other side, everything has the echo, everything has a multidimensional presentation to it, and you can choose which timeline you choose within all the geological presentations you see, as in people and trees and crystals and rocks and houses and furniture, and everything has that echo. And all of this is occurring within your body, and it's how you perceive the reality will be the reality that you live within. That's what we're doing collectively. We're creating the outside in, the compression and the implosion, and our environment is simply mirroring what we are. But the other way of looking at that is we are mirroring our environment. So that's where the flat earth comes in. Please do not think I am saying the earth is flat. Please do not think, go away, like Magenta Pixie's a flat earther. She's now confirmed the earth is flat. I'm not confirming that the earth is flat. So if you want to know what I am saying, rewind what I just said and listen to it again. I'm not saying it's not flat. I'm not saying it is either. In my reality, it's a spherical sphere, but there has been a change to that spherical presentation within this cosmic galactic storm. There was some storm change. I won't say damage, because it's not damage. It's never damage in that sense. So that's my stance on what that means. So flat earth system to spherical globe and vice versa, magnetic north becoming magnetic south. So I've explained that the inner pole shift, magnetic north becomes magnetic south within as you go through this inside out flip, and that may or may not occur within the physical reality for you, depending on the timeline you are linking with, and that may or may not have repercussions geologically. That depends when you move into that timeline, and when you move into that reality. As I said, everyone shares a global timeline, but they also have an individual timeline, and each individual may have a completely different timeline to the person next to them, even though they're sharing the global one. So again, tough to explain. All geological and physical metaphors formed in matter are thus understood as you move mountains with your mind. So what the 9 is saying there is geological and physical metaphors formed in matter. So that is, well, I guess again I could use the crystal. So this crystal is a metaphor formed in matter, not a particularly strong metaphor because it's in the shape of a crystal, but just say this was a crystal skull. I've got one somewhere, but it's not here. That would be more of a metaphor formed in matter, because it's a metaphor for the human skull, the crystal skull, the transformation, the DNA. So would a crystal be. A crystal is a metaphor for the DNA, for the change to the silicate molecular structure. So there are many metaphors formed in matter, and if you look at the things the 9 have just said here, the inner and true pole shift, flat earth system itself, spherical globe, vice versa, magnetic north becoming magnetic south, they're all metaphors formed in matter, meaning they may well be a matter presentation physically, or they may not be, but they're metaphors as well. And the reason why they form in matter is because of the consciousness of humanity holding them as either as a literal happening in a somewhat of a cohesive way, or as a metaphor. More powerful, they would be holding it as a metaphor, and when they're cohesive with that metaphor, that can actually mirror itself within the geological reality, but it may not, depending on where you are within your timeline. Also, it doesn't matter whether it's a metaphor or not, because in itself it's a symbol, it's a letter of a cosmic alphabet, it's language, and what the nine is saying here is are thus understood. So at this time of this crystal Stargate and everything that's occurring, and the whole dark matrix, inverted matrix, and the plan of the service to self individuals, and the whole Earth story, and it's a huge story, it's understood. It's thus understood as you move mountains with your mind. Again, that's a metaphor in itself. So this is a very multi-layered little section in this transmission. As you move mountains with your mind, moving mountains with your mind is doing something huge just with your mind, metaphorically. But literally, you could move a literal mountain with your mind. If there were enough of you together, all in a cohesive state and all in a fourth density configuration, then you may well be able to move a mountain or just a stone, or depending on where you are. And that's how the places like Stonehenge and the pyramids were built. It was with mind movement rather than the physical body movement. But in the fourth density, it's kind of the same thing to an individual who's experiencing fourth density. The mind and the body are one, they're not separate. And the mind, the body mind is not confined just to the physical body. It's not experienced as just being within the physical body. It's experienced as being outside of the physical body. So everything was very different then when the Stonehenge and the pyramids were created, and that was when before the full fall in a Lemurian civilization. So the pyramids, they were utilized by the Atlanteans, and they were continued by the Atlanteans, but the ancient stones like Stonehenge and some of the pyramids occurred on this planet around a Lemurian time, a Lemurian civilization. Lemurian times went on for millions of years and existed in multiple dimensions. So they would also be known as extraterrestrials. If you want to say the extraterrestrials built the pyramids, that would be true, but that doesn't really explain the full story, because they were also individuals who lived on this planet as well. So they weren't just extraterrestrial because they were from other planetary systems. They could travel throughout the cosmos, but many of them were here on Earth, although it wouldn't really be the Earth that we know. So in a sense, it's another planet. So yes, but saying extraterrestrials built the pyramids conjures up a picture of an extraterrestrial flying down in a spaceship, getting out the door, walking over and waving a magic wand, and the pyramid appears. And that's very, very literal, and that isn't how it happened, but it's still true. And again, metaphor. So the nine are putting metaphor into this paragraph as they are explaining what metaphor is, what metaphor formed in matter is, how you are now understanding it at this time in this crystal Stargate, and why are you understanding it? That's the most important question. Why are you understanding all this now? So that you know what you are doing with your pineal gland and your inner technology. You understand what it is, what it's for, and what you're supposed to do with it. And this teaching is coming out now, and it won't be coming out just from me. The nine are telling me that this is a download coming into all of the starseeds who are connected to that system, that higher matrix of organic light, if you like. There will be other channels and conduits and way showers and talking about this sort of thing in their own unique way. Why is this coming out now? Because it's in a safe space. It's okay to deliver these teachings, like how dark magic works and how the service to self agendas are put into place, and how the inverted matrix is created. What tools do they use? What is the game? What's metaphor formed in matter? What's the pineal gland for in the inner technology and the endocrine system in its higher form? What does it do, and what are we supposed to do with it? All of this is coming out now, and it's okay for everyone to know this and speak about it on a collective level. It's okay to deliver this teaching. It is no longer secret. It is no longer held in mystery school circles where a few people would gather together in secret and get out these big ancient books and talk in hushed whispers about this deeply esoteric knowledge. This is mainstream. Okay, it's not fully mainstream, let's face it, but the mainstream can find it. You know, YouTube is mainstream, social media is mainstream, books are mainstream, so it's out there and it's safe to do so now. Why? Because those talking about it and receiving this information have reached critical mass in number and in consciousness. So therefore it's just too anchored and too supported a system to be hijacked and to be squashed and reduced and hidden, etc., etc. So that's the you know, pretty much a main teaching really with this transition. And then the 9 go on to say, you are in essence the greatest illusionists that ever lived. You have outsmarted those who would control you, for you have always been illusion to them. So what the 9 is saying here is, without you, me, without us knowing, you are in essence the greatest illusionists that ever lived. Now, an illusionist is he or she who creates illusion. You've outsmarted those who would control you, for you've always been illusion to them. That's very multi-layered and very deep, and the 9 would say allow that specific message to mean what it means to you, because it is fractal and multi-layered and infinite in its analysis. So I couldn't do that analysis full justice to what it means, but what I would say the 9 are saying here is, those that would control you, the service to self factions, 3rd and 4th dimensional, have never really seen you, me, us clearly. They've seen what they wanted to see: profane, ignorant, the masses, just disregarded and seen as nothing but a nuisance. They've never really seen what we were and what we are, which is all, everything and all. Even the highest spiritually aware teachers in that service to self structure have not been aware of the ability of the collective starseeds and just how powerful they are and could be. Only now do they realize this, but it's too late for them to do anything about it because they've come into their power. So I've discussed this in previous parts to this analysis, and the 9 are saying this here. So you are in essence the greatest illusionists that ever lived. And that's not just an explanation, it's a code and it's a trigger to your empowerment. Take it in a balanced way that holds humility and surrender. So when I say to you, you are one of the greatest illusionists, you are the greatest illusionists that ever lived. So if I'm speaking to one person, I would say you are the greatest illusionist that has ever lived. Take that on board as a acknowledgement. Yes, I am the greatest illusionist that's ever lived. And so is everyone else. And I humbly accept that knowing in surrender, as natural as I accept my own name. But if you accept that as, yeah, I'm the greatest illusionist that's ever lived, I certainly am, Nobody is as great as me. No one is as good an illusionist as I am. I'm above everyone else, for I am the best. That's completely out of alignment, totally out of synchronization with the ascension timeline, and takes you into the God complex, which is a service to self energy. And you pop off out of the Starseed collective, and we've lost you. So come on back into humility, and then you can take that label as a greatest illusionist that ever lived. You have outsmarted those who would control you. So you outsmarted them who would control you. They would like to control you, but they are not, because you outsmarted them. And that is what the Starseeds have done. They have jumped ahead of that stage by stage plan. They have won the chess game on that almighty chessboard, if you like. They have done something together that was not expected. Yes, they knew about the Starseed revolution and the coming of these awakened, aware individuals, but they did not foresee how that would manifest. And here it is. And now the only way that they can try and hijack that group is to turn it against one another. And that's the only thing that they can do now, and hope that the individual loses that empowerment and that ability to conduct the inner technology and the pineal gland creations, because they're so caught up in a polarity war with their own brothers and sisters who are on the same team. That's the only thing that threatens the Starseed movement. And if you look around, you'll see it before your very eyes. People running each other down and telling each other off and saying, no, you're wrong, I'm right. You've got it this bit right and that bit wrong. And everybody's an expert with one another. Yes, we are all experts. We're supposed to be experts together, even if our belief system and knowing is different to our neighbors. It's about embracing all of these belief systems and just seeing that they're different facets of an overall diamond, if you will, to use a pretty cliched metaphor. So that's the only way that the service to self groups can actually hijack. And it's not really a hijacking, it's putting a stumbling block in the way. Luckily, there are enough starseeds who are aware of this, so that in itself creates a critical mass of consciousness, which acts like a fail-safe umbrella, sort of raining down upon all the other starseeds who are at war with one another. They still have pure hearts and they're still on their journeys, and more starseeds are realizing, let's agree to differ, even though that in itself is a multi-layered sentence. That's really where we need to come into place, is embracing one another regardless of their belief system. Don't look at someone's belief system or their words or what they're saying. Look at their energy. That's the way to tell if they're part of that collective. If you can see and feel energy, you will know who is genuine and who is part of that starseed movement and who is not. You will see it in their very essence, or feel it when you're around them. And that again is the illusion, because the service to self individuals, they can't see that. They might be able to tell who is awakened and who isn't, but in a crowd, only some of them may be able to pick that out. And anyone who's had their empathy hijacked is still working in a limited system, and they still can't flourish in fullness, because the control they're under actually places limitations upon their own empathic ability. So true empaths who are flourishing without boundary other than their own cohesive boundary, which is the event horizon of their infinite structure, which isn't a boundary in that sense, those individuals are able to flourish in their knowing without limitation. So the 9 go on to say, the unseen, the unimportant, and the utterly profane. So that's how the service to self individuals would have seen, or did, and sometimes do still, but not as much, but did in the past, see the humans, the people, individuals who would potentially polarize into a positive polarization. The unseen, they just didn't see us. They don't see them as to their fullest potential. The unimportant, we've got our agenda. We're the important ones. We're the ones who are going to control this planet and this galaxy, or however they feel they want to go with their control system. We are the ones. They are unimportant. And the utterly profane, as in they don't have the ability to ever know what we know. What surprised them is the fact that we do know what they know, and we do know what they're doing. How? When on a physical level, we were not trained in a very tightly controlled mystery school type training school, if you like. So they didn't understand where that training was coming from, because they've had it from within their generation, within their generational families. They've had it from birth, and we were just kind of out there in the system alone. How on earth did we come to the realizations that we're now coming to? And as I've said before in other interviews and talks, we were trained from birth in a completely different way. We were trained in a multi-dimensional training ground, in a collective starseed school, without even knowing we were there. It's only now that we're coming to that knowing. So again, we've always been illusion to them, because they didn't see us and they didn't see what we were doing. They had no idea when we were all born that we were being trained from birth in the same way that they were, but in a completely different way, and in a way that gives us freedom without the limitations. And those limitations prevent the full flourishing of any magical ability that they may have. Even the most magical of the service to self structures are still within limit, because they place limitation upon themselves simply by virtue of being service to self. So the unseen, the unimportant, the utterly profane, you were dismissed as simply coincidental, as in, it's just coincidental, as in they're there, they're there. It's a coincidence, but it isn't anything we need to really be worried about. They're just there, and that's it. It was a dismissal ultimately. And then I go on to say this was the greatest mistake, in inverted commas, if you will. There are no mistakes, even within a service to self structure, that are following their soul's path in that distorted reality. It's not a mistake as such, but it is a mistake from the perspective of it's not what they wanted to do. If they'd been more aware of what we were and our potential hundreds of years ago, they may have put, well, to be honest, there's nothing they could have done. There's nothing they could have done, because they can't hijack beyond the fourth dimension, and you're looking at fifth, sixth, seventh dimensional, multi-dimensional presentations. You can't hijack that. So even if they'd known thousands of years ago, they still wouldn't have been able to change anything. There's in no timeline can that be changed. It's an infinite structure of higher dimensionality. And it's because it's based on pure heart and pure love and bliss charged love. That's an essence in itself. It is a being. It is an intelligence. It's alive. You can't you can take bits of it and change it into some kind of illusion so that it's disguised, but you can't actually do anything about changing it. And that's the same thing as the full 12-strand DNA template. The DNA configuration is the same thing. For now, the controllers realize your collective power, and it's too late. So there you are. They realize, they see, they know. It's like, goodness me, we've got a group here that potentially are going to start controlling the timelines for this planet and working against our agenda. And we're not going to get the super states, and we're not going to get the one world government, and we're not going to get the microchipped population, and we're not going to get our negative fourth density or negative fifth dimension, which is the ultimate goal of those who understand what that means. There's a whole bunch of them who don't even know what that means, but it's on a need to know basis within that pyramidical structure. So they realize your collective power, and it is too late. The genie cannot be placed back into the bottle, as it were, back into the proverbial bottle, as it were. You are now seen in your true form. So the genie's out of the bottle, as in, whoa, out comes the genie, magic is occurring, the proverbial bottle is sitting there, and they'd love to be able to put it back in and sort of stop it all, and they're trying to do that through the media massively. The media is where they're trying to control everything, and all that's doing is reinforcing and keeping trapped those who are already trapped. So the media is generating a false matrix by those who are believing it to be truth. However, because there are so many individuals awake and outside of that, I mean, they will look at media, look at a story, and they laugh, you know, when they see something written. I mean, the other day I was, you know, I don't normally read mainstream newspapers because they're all full of the same thing and I know what's in there, but I happened to stumble upon an article here in the UK, I think it was in the Guardian, I'm not sure, and it was saying something about Donald Trump, and it said how he is talking about things he's doing, and they described him as having reptilian thinking. It's like laughing, because they will point the finger at someone else using the very things that they do. Now, they're aware that the whole reptilian thing is really big in the, you know, even in mainstream, it's becoming more and more well known, and it's used to describe that faction, the service to self faction, and the whole deep state thing. I'm not saying they're reptilian, by the way, that's a whole other subject. They are and they're not, and that's another really deep one, but they actually used the word reptilian to describe Donald Trump, and so that's what I mean. Somebody who is outside of that control structure and that trapping system will look at the media and see it for what it is. This particular film is full of brainwashing metaphors and images that are going to send someone's pineal gland into a negative spiral and create that reality. This particular media story is putting energy onto that person that is completely the opposite of what that person is. And those who are outside of that trapping system can see that immediately. Now, the more people that see that, and that's there as a collective energy field, it affects everyone else, especially at the times of these portals and gateways, especially at the time of this crystal gateway. It affects others. So even those who are entrapped in that system and listen to the media or read the stories and believe it to be the case, they could wake up at any time. So the service to self individuals are losing more and more all the time. They're losing individuals, and there's less and less entrapment and less individuals to feed their false matrix, and therefore the media is now being seen as a bit of a joke, even amongst third dimensional individuals who haven't necessarily woken up. You know, the media is known as a bit of a joke, really, to a point that is more than what the service to self groups would want. So the genie cannot be placed back into the proverbial bottle, and they've tried to do it. They've tried to get the genie back into the bottle through media, and it hasn't worked, and it's not working. You are now seen in your true form. So those higher spiritual aware, more aware service to self individuals are seeing what, it's not that they see us in the true form in the sense of that we are source, and that we're multidimensional beings. They're seeing us as knowing that we are. That's the true form. They realize that we know what we are. Now, some of those individuals are happy about this. Not happy, that's the wrong emotion. They are okay with it. They are actually quite pleased about it. It's difficult to find an emotion because it isn't really happiness. It's kind of like they're glad of it. That's because there are a few of these service to self individuals that have moved into full memory, just like we are moving into. So they are aware that they are all things, and they are aware that they are unified, and they are aware that we are their brothers and sisters. So they see this as a game, and a game that's being played, and that we're all family. And so when they see part of their family achieve memory recall, they are pleased about that because they see that as them being catalysts for that, which from the perspective of polarization, that's true. They are catalysts to that. So there are some that from that point of view, they will be pleased. That doesn't mean all of them are pleased, as in each and every individual within the structure. And that doesn't mean that the individuals that are pleased within the entire part of their entire body. Part of them may be pleased and other parts of them may not be, because the part that knows we're all family and we're playing a game is pleased because they were catalysts to that shift and momentum within a polarity field. But they're also they also hold the other aspect, which is, but we still need to get our agenda done because we need to create our negative fourth density or negative polarized fifth dimension. So there's a mix of feeling there. When you know that, though, it does help you to see the service to self groups in the same way that they see us from that higher perspective, which is we're all family. They were a catalyst, we agreed to it, but as I've said before, that doesn't mean that you move into a place where you fully accept the way they go about achieving their agenda within the third dimension. That's when you bring in the indigo judgment and say, no, that stops now. It's gone on for thousands of years, it stops. So you have all of these different parts of you as well. So it helps you not to go into a polarized battle or a polarized war. You will if you're in the third dimension and you learn about this. You will if you are embracing fourth dimensional reality. You'll go into polarity battle and you'll feel extremely negative emotions towards that faction. That's okay. It's part of your learning. It's normal as long as you don't stay there. You can stay there for a while, and there is no time limit on what that while is. It might be weeks or it might even be years, but the idea is not to stay there. And it's important because there are starseeds right now that are in a trajectory where they're coming into their mission, and the fact that they're still in polarization of battle and war with service to self is putting limitations on them from being able to flourish in their mission. So it's time for those individuals to find this balance within them. It's not forgiveness in the sense of, I forgive you all for everything you've done for millions and millions of years. I love you all. Let's just get on. It isn't that. It is the energy of forgiveness taken within you and used as a tool to assist you in not being in the battle or the war with them. You can still hold some form of polarity, which is you are what I am not, and you are what we do not wish to create in our next dimensional reality. But it isn't done with judgment in the sense of I judge you. It's done with judgment in the sense of the true warrior, he who judges through indigo energy, which is the seeing and the knowing of what is not in alignment with the best outcome for this entire planet and humanity. So judgment is a multidimensional word in and of itself, which I spoke about in an earlier part of this analysis. So I'll finish that there. The last sentence there being, you are now seen in your true form. And I think I will probably have, I can't really say how many, but a few more before we get to the end of this analysis. And I will be back to continue with this. And so I hope that's given you more triggers and codes and things to think about, because it is a very deep multidimensional story, which the 9 have really told in this one transmission. And more and more can be uncovered as you move through the text. So thank you so much for listening, and I will be back with more. Bye.
In this transmission from the White-Winged Collective Consciousness of Nine, I, Magenta Pixie, bring forward information specific to utilising the rose gold flame as antidote to 5G, EMFs, chemicals, chemtrails, and similar. The presented template utilises the Schumann resonance, and the technique is alchemical unification. In this book, the Nine discuss synchronicity, discernment skills, and understanding of discordance and disharmony within truth and lightworker communities. They present a workable model of expression, assisting the spiritual explorer in creating a necessary toolkit. This allows the individual to construct a shield, bringing safety, harmony, expansion, and cohesive sovereignty into their own personal reality and their matrix field. I am pleased to present my new short book, The Black Box Program and the Rose Gold Flame as Antidote.